All right. Finally, we can discuss The Girl in the Tower by Katherine Arden. It has
I know, I've
literally
been...
been since July of last year.
I'm so sorry.
I'm so excited. Do not apologize. I'm so excited. You have no idea.
The apology is partly for me, because I loved it. And I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I just go straight into this last year? Like, why? Why didn't I? I don't know. Clearly, there was something wrong with me. Clearly.
It's fine. Listen, books call to you when they need to, and they come to
This
you
is true.
when they need to.
It's
And
true.
I think this was the perfect time for Girl in the Tower for you. So,
And it clearly was, because I flew through it and had just the best time. I really did. And then, and you know, I cried, and it was beautiful, and it made me laugh, and it was just, this is how fairy tales need to be, because this is what they should be.
yeah.
It's a pretty, solid benchmark. Again, like I said for the very first book, Bear and the Nightingale, that this is so early in this writer's career. This bodes really well for us as readers.
Yeah.
Because to be knocking them out of the park like this already, and she's only going to get better.
Yeah.
That's the nature of doing stuff. You get better at it.
So speaking of books at the right time, and speaking of her later books, so I tried her latest book, The Warm Hands of Ghosts, and it's a standalone. And it was not the right time for me. So I actually wound up DNFing it, because I'm like, this is not working for me. This is too different, because it's not fairy tale. It's not, atmospheric in the same way that the Winternight trilogy is. And I knew that I was not jiving with it. So I was like, I'm not giving it my best as a reader, and it deserves the type of reader it deserves. So
it may not be too far away. You're coming into October reasonably soon. I mean, it's already halfway through September. What the hell?
Yeah, I know,
It'll
right?
be Halloween soon, so maybe a ghost story will work then.
True. And it's related. This is not related to The Girl in the Tower. We're going off.
Tangenting really early today.
Yeah, it's related to World War I. So what is it, Armistice Day or whatever? So like October, November is perfect. Probably perfect.
Okay. That kind of is the perfect time.
All right. I guess I have plans for myself. So
sorry.
Anyways,
we'll just add that to the million other books.
Yeah, exactly. Girl in the Tower, though. So obviously you loved Bear and the Nightingale. That's enough said.
I really did. And for it to pick up pretty much straight away from where it ended in Bear and the Nightingale. First off, I didn't expect that. I expected it to be like a reasonable time jump. I don't know why I thought that, but I did. So it was quite a lovely surprise to literally come back to it on the same sort of evening as things ended in Bear and the Nightingale. So I am glad I reread Bear and the Nightingale before coming into this one. And it made me cry literally on page 2 because there was just a simple sentence, which was, come in, Vasya, it's cold. And I was like, oh my God, they don't mean. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
Because it's just, I just really loved it. It threw me back into the story exactly where I loved it. I was like, oh, okay, that was the perfect opening to the book, to just bring me exactly back to where I needed to be, and for then the story to unfold. And I was like, oh, okay. And you got all the same vibes from it. And then I was like, oh, we've got to have him back in it again. I don't like him. He's such a good villain, even though he's not a villain per se. He's just a very troubled person. And just, it was exciting, and it was like, oh, drama. And yeah, because the very first thing that happens is she nearly dies, and then she goes on a rescue, and then other people nearly die, and then there's fighting, and there's hidden identities, and it just kicks off with a hiss and a roar, and I was so in it.
So before we get into spoilers,
yeah,
I guess like general non-spoiler thoughts on the book as a whole, like from start to finish.
I mean, you gave me an expectation not to get as much magic from it as the first book, and that must have worked, because I've literally finished it yesterday going, what is she talking about? I felt there was almost more magic in this second one, because it sort of underlays everything, and it never isn't present in the story. So I really loved that while it's not quite as overt and not quite so heavily present in the story, it's there. And the concept of the book, which is, religion is coming in, and it's dampening down this paganism and all of these old spirits, really came across, because that sense of their presence was diminished. It was still there, but they weren't so overt.
It's not the same as
No.
like, that's what I was, the
Yeah.
frequent criticism or not deterrent, but the people who love The Bear and the Nightingale that don't like Girl in the Tower tend to not like Girl in the Tower because it's not the same as Bear and the Nightingale. It doesn't have that atmosphere. It doesn't have the strong the magic of it all is not very strong.
Think it
but
helps.
As you said, there is that underlying
It's
thing.
always there. I mean, because it's such a strong theme that these things are dying away, that Christianity is coming into this world and is killing this existence that's been there for centuries. And I think it helps that I've read Pratchett, that talks about faith and how the act of believing in things keeps gods strong. So while we're not talking gods, we are talking household spirits. So knowing that the major themes in the book include this changing of faith and the altering of people's beliefs, I don't know, it was fertile ground for that story to sit in, because it just made perfect sense to me. It's like, no, I get it. I get that with the less people who are believing in these household spirits, they have less power, that they will be diminishing in their ability to communicate with those that can see them, and that for those that can see them, if they haven't been living in a day-to-day routine that treasures these household spirits, they're going to start thinking they're insane for seeing these spirits, because Christianity doesn't hold with them, so therefore they must be demons, or you're hallucinating, there's something wrong with you, you've gone mad, at which accelerates that diminishing of them. So there's this whole underlying thing around the strength of what your faith can do. And we see it with Vasya, and that her faith is in these old spirits and these old fundamental sort of elemental powers in her life. Her faith in that is so strong that she's able to reinvigorate some of these almost gone household spirits and forest spirits. And it's just so wonderful to see. And then we, on top of the reasonably unusual role for a girl things we got in Bear in the Winter, now we're definitely getting a look at a woman who just does not want to be shut away. I will look like a boy if I have to, but don't you dare put me behind walls and make me not talk to anybody but other women for the rest of my life, and then only the ones that live in my house. I found that really powerful for her to be, no, shun me, excommunicate me, do what you got to do, but I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
I'm just not doing it. I want to go and see the world. And it was well done, in that she doesn't just blithely go about her business as dressed as a boy, because, that's really easy. No, she struggles with it.
Mm-hmm.
She struggles with, okay, well, how do I have a bath and no one know? And how do I function where I haven't been taught to use weapons, but I'm expected to know how to do things at the drop of a hat, because I'm a boy and I should totally know those things. And so we get those little struggles at the same time as her constant refusal to be bound by these female roles. And I just found that really powerful, and how quickly people moved to strip her of that freedom and that independence as soon as they discovered that she was a girl. And that really struck me. That struck me quite hard, because, you know, even now in 2024, there are still times where I can feel limited by gender. And so it's always going to resonate, I think, with women, that sense of, once they find out that I can be that vulnerable, now it's a vulnerability, and I could potentially be hurt because of it. So I just,
yeah. I mean, to your point, vulnerable does not equate vulnerability, but society sees that as, you know.
And it takes away from that power. It takes away from that agency, because now they know, and that adds so many ways that you can be attacked and made powerless. And it's so just,
I guess,
so
to go
beautiful.
Full spoilers ahead, you know, toot whatever. Let's go.
Yeah, it's me and Evie. I mean, come on, we can't dance around it. We want to get into it.
Listen, I gotta use what little like, I don't know, leg up I have. This is the one time that I can be the expert with Derri.
That's
so
great.
You know,
because this is one I haven't read before.
So I love the feminism focus in this story, not just for Vasya, but for all the women.
Yes, because you see it.
Olga,
I loved her in this book. The power in her. It's given me chills just thinking about it. She's, I mean, we say goodbye to Olga in the first one when she's 14, 15. She's sent away. She's got married, and now she's going away to go and live.
Passing like comment, like, oh, this is Vasya's sister.
Yes, this is just what we do. I've chosen you a husband. He's doing you the ultimate compliment, and he's going to come here to marry you. And so, okay, she's marrying this guy she's never met before, and now she's leaving to somewhere that takes weeks to get to, and she's literally on her own, and we don't hear what happens to her next. Then we get Vasya's story in Bear and the Nightingale, and when she does reconnect with Olga, she's been established in her home now for many years. She has children. She's a power in her own right within that structure that women are allowed. But she's taken to it with some real grace, and she's clearly developed a household that values what skills women have as much as they can. And she's had to quietly accept her limitations. And every now and then it shows that Olga wishes maybe she could have done something else, but that she's had to just suck it up. And this is what I've got, and I have to make the most of it. And she has done, and she's used it as best she can to influence the few men in her life to be better. And there was such strength to Olga, this resigned acceptance to her fate, while still pushing as much as she can against those boundaries. I really, really loved the strength that we saw in Olga. I really did.
I would actually, for me, Olga is less that she's resigned to her status, is that in that, she's less resigned to her role. I don't know, because it makes it seem like it's less than, and because she says to Vasya, this is my choice.
Yeah. I'm making the most of this, and this is good. I've made this good for myself.
Yeah, and this, I mean, I think it's a great depiction of feminism in all its ways. Feminism is
Yeah.
not always, oh, strong, powerful woman, and
Because Olga is
be
a strong, powerful woman.
yeah, and
You
she's
see it in the way she controls her household
yeah, and
and
she's
how,
taking on those traditional feminine roles.
yeah,
That doesn't diminish her femininity or the
not at
feminism,
all.
you know.
No,
So
because she still has this courage and she still has the determination and there's a very
she has
she's
power.
strength. She's strong, and
Yep.
that comes through the page really clearly. Even though I say even though because obviously I'm still brainwashed into this overt shows of strength is what shows strength, but she doesn't do anything overtly powerful. But her strength, her sense of self, her worth, she has worth, and she believes in her worth, and it carries. And I loved grown up Olga. I thought she was just wonderful. And then of course we've got her little girl who is just as wild as Vasya was. And we as we get into it, we discover that she can also see the household spirits, because obviously this is a bloodline of magical women.
Yeah.
And there's a moment in the book where Olga sort of takes away the I'm a Christian wife and mother, and she looks at her sister and she goes, she's like you, isn't she?
Yeah.
And there's an acceptance there that my daughter isn't going to fit this role.
Yeah.
She is not going to be happy. This isn't going to work for her. And you see her kind of go, okay, now I have to consider that.
Yeah.
And at this point, I don't know what's going to happen with Matya, but there's very much a sense that whatever happens with her, Olga is prepared to look outside the box, perhaps, for the happiness of her daughter as much as she can, because she has the strength to encompass that and go, no, okay, my daughter isn't going to be as happy in her role as I have been.
Yep.
And I admire that greatly. So, which I think is marvelous.
Switching gears a little bit to actual plot. So obviously you already mentioned it a little bit. We pick up right off. Right off. That's a weird
right at the end.
Yeah, there you go. We pick up right where the Bear and the Nightingale leaves off. But I feel like we pretty quickly change gears as well. Like, not change gears, but like, not necessarily that there's a tonal shift, but it's just
the focus definitely moves.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of, not to belabor the point, but like, it's just that there's an almost tonal shift, not complete, but there's a tonal shift there.
I sort of saw it as the camera kind of pulling away a little bit, because we were very focused in on this one little household and this one community in the woods. And then the story kind of immediately pulls you back and goes, okay, now we're going to look at the region as a whole and how this time in history left communities vulnerable. You know, it's winter. They can't go for help. They can't expect rescue. They're on their own in winter and they have to be self-sufficient. So when villages, communities, towns are attacked, it can be months before people even know about it, let alone respond to it. So that was not so much telling, but I think that's, I mean, it does. It sets the stage.
Gives you context, historical context.
And for the more intimate dynamic when you get into the city of trying to figure out, well, who's behind it and what's the political maneuvering behind it and why is this happening? Because we haven't been attacked from any kind of concerted force for, I think, as many as 20 years. So there's an element of, okay, we're settled now and we're not used to this constant attack again. So there's that. And the disbelief in people of, well, it can't be this group of people, because that's the group of people that reported it and now want help. So they're clearly not the perpetrators because they've been attacked. Even though as a reader you're going, but that's really weird. There's something sus with this person. And for the longest time after meeting our antagonist in Cassian, I'm thinking, I don't know if I like you. I see the attraction because there is that instant spark between he and Vasya, but you're not quite sure what it is because it doesn't feel romantic. But there's a connection. There's like, oh, okay, something is there. But I don't know if I like this guy. And then he
For me,
seems to be saying the right things, and you're like, I don't know.
he's kind of similar for me to Constantine, but obviously different. Like he's a not quite a foil, but also a foil at the same time. Like he is the magical, like Constantine is the very Christian, very like our world, earthly representation, whereas Cassian is the opposite. And putting
he's
them
the old
the
world.
opposite,
he knows what she is.
and putting them in the opposite books, but Constantine as this Christian earthly thing in this very magical book of the Bear and the Nightingale, or magic focused book, and then Constantine, this very magical being, because you turns out to be,
and you do get that sense quite early that Cassian is magical. But there's a sense that he's old, he's been around a long time. He mentions quite early in the book that I haven't been to Moscow to the Kremlin in many years. I followed a woman I loved, but she's dead now. And you sort of think, okay, so there's history here, but it's long history. Okay, so he's not an ordinary man. There's something about him that's magical. And there's just something a little bit off with him. And I couldn't peg it, and I couldn't peg it, and I couldn't peg it until as we get to the reveal toward the end of the book. But it was really well done because he gives you that sense of unease.
There's that drip feed of information without it being so dumpy, and that it's
like, and you begin to accept, because at the first mention of there was the woman I loved, you're like, okay, that's going to be her mum, and you're like, because that's how stories work, especially fairy stories. And then you get stuff that supports that, and you're like, okay, yes, that's that, and oh, okay, yes, that it's her grandmother. Okay, yep, that ties in better with the timelines. And then you come down, okay, and he was in love and chased her, but she was running away. Oh, okay, now that he's more of a bad guy now, because now we have a fleeing aspect. And then 2/3 of the way through the book, we see a cruelness to him when we meet his magical horse, and the cruelty that he shows to this horse, which is always shorthand for evil, because only evil people are cruel to animals. And so that at that point he becomes the overt villain, and we get the melding of the magic and the mundane, in that magically he wants her for her power. In a mundane world, by exposing her as a woman, he takes her power away. So it was really exciting because it was very high drama moment. The entire city has turned out to watch this challenge that they've, and she's determined to win, and she's winning, only to discover that he wasn't there to win. He was there to expose her so that he could have that power over her. And that it was a body blow reading it. I'm like, oh, I messaged you before I got to that point, and I'm like, oh, he's just threatened. If I win, you're going to marry me. And that's the overt knowledge that I know you're a woman. I'm going to have you. And you're like, oh, and I messaged you. I said, oh, he's just said this. And all you did was send me eyes, like, oh. And I didn't, obviously I'm used to the Discord shorthand of something's going to happen. Okay, that was not what I was expecting, even though I knew to expect something. And it hit me. And I was like, oh, the treacherous asshole. Oh.
Yeah. Well,
that's not gentle.
Yeah, exactly.
Literally a bear in front of the city. And I was like, oh.
and it's a great representation of, or yeah, it's a great image of just, even though she won, and
Yeah, she
she won
lost.
as a woman,
Yeah,
as herself,
yeah.
society's still not gonna accept her
No,
because she's a woman, even though she
yeah.
won by her own right. Like,
That's
there's
right. She won because of her
people.
skill, because of
Yep.
her ability, and she was doing exceptionally well. She'd made really good friends. Nothing about her was false except allowing people to assume she was a boy.
Mhm.
And to see it taken away so dramatically, and having the instantaneous rejection from powerful people who had befriended the boy, this instantaneous reaction of no, and making her almost criminal for, well, yes, criminal, because they want to lock her away, just for not accepting her place as a woman.
And
She'd
shaming her family.
established, yeah,
You know, yeah.
she'd established herself as being a really awesome person. Like,
Mhm.
no, this is an intelligent person. This is a skilled person. This is a gifted person who has been an asset to this group of men
Mhm.
because of her knowledge and because of her skill. And to be immediately rejected and turned out the moment they find out that she's a woman, it
All all
hurts.
all all that
Oh,
work, all that, like,
yeah, like it just doesn't
all that
matter. None of
press
it counts
negated.
because you
Yep.
don't have a willy. And I was like,
Yeah.
are you, it hurt. Even though,
By the way, you can cuss. I don't care. So,
no, I know, but it's always funny to
okay.
call them a willy. But it hurts, even though I know that at this point of history, it wouldn't have been accepted, and that is how the reaction would have been.
Yeah.
And because that's the role that women had at the time, it still hurts as a reader, because as humans, we haven't changed. Women in those days had the same levels of potential as we do now, and they were so restricted from ever achieving anything that it just hurts when you get to see it, even in a fictional story, when you get to see it from that immediate perspective of,
Yeah.
I have things to offer and you won't let me give them.
I I
Really
wouldn't
powerful.
I would encourage, I don't wanna sign you up for anything that you don't wanna do, obviously, but I would encourage you to, I did a discussion a couple of years ago, hosting a read along of the Winternight trilogy, and, Igor from he's most frequent, on Sarah's Discord, if not entirely on
I
Sarah's
have
Discord.
encountered Eagle before, yeah.
Um,
Very intelligent, knowledgeable man,
he
and yes, he would
Yes.
bring so much insight.
He was so, he brought so much insightful and contextual information, and just general, like, awesome
Yeah, this is
discussion
the
for
world,
the
yeah.
first and second book, and I would highly, he provides so much more, like,
Yeah,
cultural
I will
context.
look it up, definitely.
Um, Link down below, for future watchers,
Yeah,
I'll make sure to link that.
yeah, I'll
Um,
remind you.
yeah, yeah, thank you. But yeah, so it's just, it's in it is astounding how Katherine Arden was able to convey the cultural context of that time
Yeah.
as a you know, non-Eastern European, non-Russian author. Like,
Yeah,
she
she's not
obviously did her
Indigenous to the
research.
area. She
Yeah,
did, and I like the fact that at the back of the book, she actually states, "I have a degree, and this is the particular reference material I used for this book."
mhm,
And I love that she tells me that. I love that she says to me, "Yes, this is a fairy tale, but I've set it somewhere real, so
mhm,
here's proof that I know what I'm talking about."
yeah,
And I really appreciated that, because it helps leave me in the story.
yeah,
Because even though I don't live in the UK anymore, I was born in the UK. I was born in a country with centuries of history, with fairy tales of all of this lore around magical creatures, and the acceptance that they were squashed and have died over time because we were no longer allowed to believe in them. So it feels real to me to read about a history time, an historical time that existed, that was real, but the beliefs were such that those magical beings still existed, even if in this instance they were beginning to dwindle. And it just felt very real, this incredibly magical based story. I loved it. I absolutely loved it, because we start to get to know some of the young men in the story far more. We get to know Sasha, who went away, again, like Olga in the first book. He went away to be a monk because his faith was particularly strong. And you never doubt that. Like, his faith is clear. He genuinely has a faith in Christianity. And we meet Dmitri, the cousin, who is the Grand Prince. And he initially comes off as quite brash, and he's like, yes, I'm all powerful and I've got a great sword and I'm a fighter. But you begin to see the pressures that he's under as this Grand Prince with no heir, and the stress of having to, at the time in history, be prepared to face the Tatars and potentially be paying taxes and wanting that money for himself, for his people, and the stresses of that as a young man who was expected to be able to fight on the front lines and deal with the taxes and be able to deal with the commoners, and be like, this isn't a constitutional monarchy as we know it now. This is a king that had to lead from a prince that had to lead from the front. He had to be able to do everything. Mm-hmm. And as the story goes on, we see the pressure that puts on him, and how much of this bold, brash prince is a front, because that's what people expect to see, even though he's actually truly stressed the fuck out and doesn't really know how to handle this situation, but can't appear to not know what he's doing. And I liked that we got that, not even vulnerability, that uncertainty. I like that we could see the uncertainty in him, even though he couldn't show that uncertainty. I really liked that. And again, we come back to Cassian, the antagonist, the way his reveal of Vasya takes away every bit of support from the Grand Prince, because Sasha's one of his most trusted counselors, and now he's a liar because he's hidden the fact that this young man is actually his sister. And now I can't trust my other great supporter because he's married to Olga, who is this young boy's sister. Now I can't trust anybody. And it becomes more powerful because we've seen how much he needs their support and how much support they are able to give him, and good counsel, and have kept him stable. So even though we're not focused on politics so much, we get a very clear indication that by taking away those people, we've now completely undermined this prince of this nation, and now he's floundering because he can't trust, supposedly, the people around him. Exceptionally well done, because we didn't harp on any politics. There was almost none, other than the knowledge of, okay, this is who this person is, these are who his supporters are, and he needs them.
There's a complexity to everything, including the political historical situation, where even I like the way you describe Cassian as an antagonist. He's not. It's never been for me in The Bear and the Nightingale and The Girl in the Tower. There's never been a good versus evil type situation, or good versus bad. There is such complexity in everyone and everything that it's kind of like the magic, where it just kind of ebbs and flows, and it's
a spectrum, and and it's seeking a balance. And you know, in the first book we had Constantine, and again, very much like Sasha, his faith is real. He has genuine faith and belief in Christianity, and it's only when he's sent out into the country and he's very much faced with this, what I would call paganism. I don't know if there's an equivalent word for the culture at the time, but this paganistic spirit worship that he now has to face far more. It's just so much more in his face when he goes out into the countryside, because they're much more present, that it shakes him to his core, because his faith is so strong that now he believes that, oh my, this is devils, this is demons, and it's possession and it's evil. And so nothing he does to Vasya is done out of cruelty. It's done out of what he sees to be protecting her soul. He genuinely sees what he's doing as a good thing. I'm protecting your soul so that you can go to heaven and that you can be living in God's light. He doesn't see that the spirits that she's interacting with are also positive, protective, for the good of their people, entities. And so it's not that he's evil. It's not that he's the bad guy. He's somebody who's misunderstood a dynamic and, well-intentioned, has basically just come in and fucked everything up. Yeah. And
speaking of Constantine, did you expect to see him?
I did not expect to see Constantine. And I mentioned earlier, I was like, oh, him again? Really? Because you don't like Constantine because he's so weak. I mean, for an incredibly powerful antagonist, he's a weak man. He was easy for the negative spirits to manipulate in Bear and the Nightingale. All they had to do was pretend to be God, and he was like, oh, okay, yep, I'm in. There was no questioning of the motivation of what he was being told. And now we know he's broken. We meet him again and we're like, oh God, really? And we know it's going to be a problem because Sasha, not knowing who he is, takes him to Olga. So before Vasya makes her way to her sister has had this Constantine telling her that her sister is a witch and she sees demons and she enthralls men under her spell. And Olga's like,
it's my sister.
My sister? My sister, really? But I've been living in the city now for quite a long time, and Christianity's got quite a solid hook in me now. And she was always a bit fey, and maybe.
And then there's the uncertainty of like him telling.
Yeah, and because
about the father's death, and it's like,
that's right.
What do I believe?
That's right, because as we know, Constantine tells no lies. Neither does Vasya, but neither of them is telling the full truth. And Olga's not stupid. She's like, somebody's lying. I'm not getting what actually happened out of either of these people, and their accounts don't match.
Lying by omission.
Yeah, and so simply through not being 100% honest and giving the full story to Olga, Vasya makes herself unreliable. And so her sister can't kind of go, no, this guy's wrong. This is just my sister living the old ways, and I shall shun her for that, rather than, oh my God, I can't trust you. And now we're all doomed because my political standing is gone and my daughter is now going to be thrust out of society and doomed. All of these things that come with this unmasking of Vasya as a woman, instead of her being a genuine ally and going, no, Constantine's mad and I'm going to fully support you in this role without doubt, without question. And I'm going to stop you getting into stupid situations that could expose you. So, that removal of Olga as a full ally so early in the story is so cleverly done, because it's not motivated by evil. It's not motivated out of cruelty or spite. It's not villainous. It's a man in his faith who doesn't understand, trying to protect these women from what he sees as a great evil, as a great darkness. And that makes the story so compelling.
Yeah, and he kind of sets up the unreliableness, but he makes
He sows
Olga
doubt.
uncertain. Yeah, he sows doubt, but the not just the literal not unmasking, but unwrapping. I don't know. She has like the hat thing, unhatting. I don't know what you would call
Yeah.
it.
Which is revealed. I mean,
When
she's
she's
literally
revealed to the entire area, like on a more intimate level between Vasya and Olga, and it doesn't has nothing to do with Constantine. It's all about Olga and Vasya. With what I mentioned before about Vasya chooses to save her sister and
yeah.
let her sister's child die. And Olga's like, no, I wouldn't have done that. I wanted
And
to.
we know she wouldn't. We see her in the vision that
Was so
the
emotional for me.
reality.
Yeah.
Oh, I was bawling. I was absolutely beside myself because we're in this really emotive scene where even despite the friction between the two of them, as she goes into childbirth, Olga wants her sister with her.
Mm-hmm.
So her sister's in there with her. Her sister has become the main carer during this labor. And because of Vasya's connection to Morozkov as death, she can see him waiting. And she's like, no, don't you dare take my sister. Don't you dare. And he's like, I'm here for one of them.
I have to take somebody.
Because she's so close to death, Olga is able to be part of the conversation. And she says, take me. My daughter lives. This child I'm having lives. And Vasya takes that decision from her and goes, no, you're not dying. And in taking that decision from Olga, kills her child that Olga had chosen to save. And that's really upsetting on so many levels. As a woman, as a sister, as an aunt, as a woman who's had children, women who haven't had children, women who have lost children. That's an incredibly powerful, emotional scene of the love of a mother, even before a baby's born. And I was bawling my eyes out, absolutely bawling my eyes out, because that's the level of emotion that's in that moment.
Yeah.
And it's actually dealt with beautifully, because at the end of the scene, we have Morozkov take the baby incredibly gently. And I was like, like I was properly beside myself, just because of the care that was taken with this tiny spirit. But the power in Vasya at that moment is possibly the only time we see Olga really see how powerful her sister is.
Yeah.
And it just so much emotion in that scene. I was
it's a good parallel to what Vasya is going through with her posing as a man, but not really not posing as a man.
Mm-hmm.
She's just letting everyone believe, like you mentioned before.
Yeah, she's just letting people.
And that choice is taken away from her of being able to tell her family that, hey, this is. She had planned to, come out to everyone to live as Vasya, as a woman, but that choice was taken from her by Kasia.
Yeah.
The same way that Olga's choice. Yeah, exactly. Agency. That's the word.
And it was powerful because of it, because she's even aware in that moment that that's what she's doing.
Yeah.
That she's taking this choice from Olga, this incredibly personal choice as a woman having a baby. Doesn't get any more personal, me or the child. And to take that away from Olga, and she recognizes that she's doing something awful, and she recognizes that she's stealing power from her sister in that moment, and she realizes she's not entitled to make this choice. It is selfish, and does it anyway.
Yeah.
Bawling. I was a wreck. I did eat a lot of ice cream after that scene. Not gonna lie.
As one should.
I needed to feel better because it was hard. It was a hard thing.
To go from something less I don't want to say less emotional, but more
less intimate,
thrilling, but
maybe.
not in a good way.
Yeah.
The whole fire in Moscow at the end of the book.
Oh, that fire, the Kremlin. I mean, it's beautiful because we've only had these little tiny hints of the greater Firebird story, just tiny, tiny hints of it. And then when we see the sudden connection between this mystery horse, this beautiful golden horse who has been treated dreadfully and trapped, and the callback to Solovey, and was he born or was he hatched? That there was a wonderful little connection there. And then to see this mare transform into the phoenix, this firebird, and in the act of fleeing, set the city aflame. There was this release of primal belief and primal magic, because let's face it, humans have worshipped fire since before we had a word for it. And because fire is crucial to life. Fire is something that all of us fear still to this day. Mm-hmm. It's a primal driving force, fire. So to get the imagery of this released belief, this released fire being so destructive, being so uncontainable, being
and
uncontrollable,
the magic having a very tangible,
and
palpable impact
impacting an entire city.
Yeah,
you know, if we release this, it is going to cause a lot of damage. There's a reason that this firebird is trapped, because unchecked, it can destroy. And we see that destruction because she's been trapped for so long, because her need to flee is so powerful that she takes out the city. Yeah. and not intentionally. This is just a result of her being released. Fire, and a freaking shitload of it.
And another great depiction of age or lack of agency. She's been so controlled by Cassian that in that fleeing, once she's free, she's just gonna go. Like there's no
care being given. There's no. It is literally, I have to let this force out that I have been contained. There's this sense of an impending explosion that's being held back and held back and held back and held back. And that pressure, I just got a sense of this pressure in her, that when her bridle was taken off and that binding was released, that she just had to kind of go and take out the city. And yet in the act of doing that, fire is a cleanser. Fire cleanses.
Destroys and cleanses.
I mean, that goes back to every kind of magical belief and culture I can think of. Everything is susceptible to fire. And if you kill it with fire, it stays dead. There's a reason we say kill it with fire.
Yeah.
And so the cleansing that then happens in the Kremlin, where there's a sense of everyone's now going to take a step back and go, oh, okay, we survived that.
Yeah, and
we can start fresh now.
Exactly. In any sort of, what is it? I'm thinking of like Hindu religion, of like the destruction and creation. They're very intertwined. So
absolutely,
to be able to create, you must destroy, and vice versa. So it's just
well, it's those cycles of life that form the basis of a lot of these fairy tales, with whichever culture you want to go back with. That the fairy tales, much like Christianity, much like every god around the planet, they're a way to explain things that were acts of God. You create a story around it so that you can understand it. That why would this be necessary? Because in order to grow, we need to destroy this and rebuild. Because we need that cleansing fire. We need the cleansing flood. We need the cleansing, whatever it is that swept away the old and allowed us to bring in something new. And fairy tales were a way that they described that.
Yep.
And so, of course, you're going to have a firebird when you live in wintry Russia. Something people who don't live in snowy areas don't realize is how dry a snowy winter can be. And stuff burns real fast in winter, which seems counterintuitive.
Because you got all this water around.
Yeah, it's a lot of water. But the material that has been frozen burns really fast. Like, really fast, because consider it, you're inside. Literally all of your energy is going into keeping the inside dry and warm. Everything gets that little bit more flammable.
Yep. And
so
to go, because we're almost at an hour and we're talking about the end anyways, talking about the what is it, the magical or the fantastic depictions or rationale for very natural things.
Yeah.
You have this fire that's caused by magic, and then you have Morosco, who comes back, who I did not expect.
Well, who's called back, is dragged back.
Called back, and he's the one that puts out the fire.
Yeah, because we're going to bring snow, and fresh snow. We're going to dampen this fire. We're going to smother it, and that's something winter weather. It's very counterintuitive. Yeah, it's not like rain. Rain would put the fire out by dousing the flame. You'd get the steam and the hiss, and okay, we're going to drive away the fire like that. Snow kills fire by smothering it, and the way that it's portrayed, and it's less destructive than water, because it doesn't then cause secondary issues around water damage on top of fire damage. So you're getting a very gentle way of ending this destruction, and that it comes out of the heat of her desire, the heat of her need for him to come and rescue her, because she's figured out, you will come to me. If I'm dying, you're coming here. And if I've got you here, I can make you do this because I know you care. And so she forces him into admitting this. And it's very powerful, because up until this point, she's at the absolute nadir of her existence. She's had all her power taken away. She's been revealed as a woman. She has nothing to give. She's going to be banished to a nunnery at this point. City's now on fire, and she saves the city. Her power, her agency, her choice saves this Kremlin. And then she has to flee anyway. Yeah. She's regained her power. She's regained her agency. She's got, actually, no, you don't get to tell me I have no power. She drags it all back to herself and then has to flee ultimately, because it's not acceptable. This, you strip it back to the core of what the story's trying to tell you about this dominance of Christianity and how it's killing these spirits. In order to retain that connection to the spirits, she has to leave the city. She cannot live within what has now become the norm and still exist as she should be, which is in touch with these spirits and in touch with the world around her, and part of this more basic magical structure. And I just loved it. It was so beautiful that the act of regaining her power isolates her again.
And on top of that, in the give and take, or the what is it, the yin and the yang or whatever, she has to call Morosco, because if she's gonna die, might as well call Morosco.
Yeah,
but he's gonna come. By saving her and Moscow, he is the one that effectively dies. He fades.
Yeah, he's diminished, and it ties. And again, it's that fairy tale tying in of reality. We're explaining a natural phenomenon, and that we've literally just had the celebration of midwinter. We're turning the corner of weather into spring. So of course the Winter King has to die. We get this in every pagan culture around the world. There's something that kills winter, and Christianity sort of hijacked it in many ways. We get Christmas, which takes the place of a lot of midwinter festivals from different cultures, and all of them involve fire, the Yule log, Christmas fire, and of life and new growth and regrowth. We're going to take away the aspects of winter, and now we're going to have the last of our fresh meat from last season, because we're going to now get ready for spring. So of course Moroskov has to die. Of course he does. That's the way of the cycle of seasons. And yet she also knows that come next winter, he will be there because he is winter. So there's that beautiful cycle of acceptance that you only get winter during this period of time. He's only there in winter. But as soon as it becomes spring, he's gone. He can't be powerful because it's spring.
Yep. And with acceptance, there must be loss. With grief, there must be joy.
Yeah.
That's all these.
There is a balance.
Yeah. With that said, what do you think will happen? What do you anticipate? What do you look forward to? What do you think will happen in Winter of the Witch when you get to it in a little over a year's time?
That's not true. I'm going to read it much sooner than that, because I really, really, really enjoyed Girl in the Tower, and I don't know where it's going, and I'm happy not knowing where it's going. Like I'm willing to just be ready to be led into the next part of the story, and it is something that I considered early in Girl in the Tower, with Moroskov being winter, and we first meet Cassian, and he's described it with very fiery language. And I'm thinking, is he summer? Is he the other side of this? Is he the flip side of this coin? And I wasn't sure, because even with my kind of broad knowledge of fairy tales, I'm thinking, I can't remember there ever being a personification of summer. I can think of any number of stories where winter has a form, but I couldn't think of any with summer. And that kind of made me put that on the back burner and go, okay, maybe not, because I can't think of a personality that could be. But the imagery was there with, just the color, the redness, the oranges, the fire colors, that this was the opposite of winter. So maybe we're going to go there. The cover suggests so. The cover's very bright. The cover's very sunny in terms of the light that is being shown. Maybe.
And yet it's called Winter of the Witch. So it's again that juxtaposition of the two.
Yes, I'm like, I'm not really sure. But I'm happy to be taken wherever it goes, because I trust this story. Ultimately, I trust these characters. I trust what she's doing. I'd certainly trust how invested she's going to get me, with the amount of crying I did in the tail end of that book. It was ridiculous and earned. It didn't feel like I was being manipulated. It felt earned. So that's always a good thing. So I'm very much looking forward to the next one, just to see, being able to go, oh, what happens next?
So I'm sure I've mentioned it before to you. I'm sure I mentioned it in the chat that we did on Bear and the Nightingale, but I am so happy, delighted, excited, joyous that not only that you're reading this series, but that you're enjoying it as much as you are, because I just want to give you back what you gave me with The Realm of the Elderlings.
Oh, you have done. And because these are beautiful books. These really are beautiful books. And the depth of feeling is as real, as poignant. I mean, the scene we talked about earlier with Olga and her child was raw. That was as raw an emotional scene as anything Robin Hobb has given me. And that speaks to Katherine Arden's class. She's the woman can put words to a page.
Mother, like, as far as I know, she doesn't have kids.
To be able to really delve into the emotion of that moment and to what these women are going through in that moment. There's some real skill there to be able to do that and to evoke that reaction. And hey, we have these channels because we love books. We love books because they evoke emotions in us. So the ones we love most are the ones we're going to cry in. They're the ones that make us feel something, which is why these have a place of prominence on my shelf. I mean, okay, they're beautiful, so they deserve to be on display, but they also mean something. They've created an emotional response in me, which is the highest praise you can give a story. So thank you so much for them, because great stories are always welcome in my heart. So if anyone
Arden.
watching, oh God, yeah. If anyone watching, why are you still watching? Because we're full spoilers. But if you haven't read these books, Evie knows what she's talking about.
If you don't listen to me,
these
listen
are
to Derri.
beautiful. These are just so beautiful. They really are. Just so beautiful.
So, with that said, whenever Derri reads The Winter of the Witch, we will definitely be discussing it. No ifs, ands, or buts, even if I have to fly to New Zealand. Gotta get a passport.
Maybe I should work harder at being difficult. But no, I'm all too ready to come on live and go, oh no, I'm more than happy to talk about this because it's gorgeous.
So thank you, Derri.
You are more than welcome.
And anyone that watched this while we streamed it live, thank you. And anyone that is watching this later, also thank you. I will leave a link down below whenever we do have the discussion about the Winternight trilogy. Oh my god, The Winter of the Witch. I will leave a link down below for any future watchers. And thank you again
to the previous discussions with.
Yes, Igor. Thank you for that reminder. So, yes, all the relevant Winternight discussions, because similar to the Spear Cuts Through Water, the Winternight trilogy,
so good.
I want my name associated with anything and everything Winternight trilogy, so just say it.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, thank you again. I will go ahead and end the stream.
Royal wave.
Royal wave. Violin wave, boys.